Hey everyone! Today we're sewing the Orbit jacket. The Orbit jacket features a relaxed, oversized fit designed for comfortable layering. It is finished with a centered front zipper closure and a collarless round neckline for a clean and modern look. The front bodice includes sculptural pleats that originate from the neckline and extend to the side seams, creating subtle structure and a soft fox raglan effect. The sleeves are shaped with a cocoon silhouette, adding volume while maintaining a balanced overall form. The jacket is fully lined for a clean interior finish and features single welt pockets for a refined tailored detail. This jacket is designed for woven fabrics with enough body and structure to hold its shape. Recommended fabrics include cotton canvas, denim, cotton twill or drill, gabardine, wool or wool blends suitable for jackets. Avoid heavy coat weight wool. Medium to firm weight woven fabrics are recommended. The fabric should not be too thick or stiff, but also not overly thin or drapey. For wool fabrics, a weight under 500 grams per meter is recommended, with a thickness of approximately 1.5 millimeters or less. Pre-wash, dry, and iron your fabric before cutting out your patterns to prevent distortion. For wool or wool blend fabrics, do not pre-wash. Instead, condition the fabric with steam pressing only. Here are the materials and tools you'll need for this project. Let's get started. First, cut the lightweight fusible interfacing slightly larger than the back neck facing, front opening facing, and pocket flap pattern pieces. Fuse it with steam to the wrong side of the pattern pieces. Once the pieces have cooled completely, trim the excess interfacing along the fabric edges. Prepare a strip of fusible lightweight interfacing with a width of 2 cm. Apply it along the armhole area and the center front of both the wrong side of the front and back bodice. Then, using the front bodice paper pattern, cut out the pocket area. Keep the cut piece and set it aside for later steps. On the wrong side of the front bodice, place the paper pattern and mark the pocket area with the marking tool. Using the previously cut pocket pattern, add a 1 cm seam allowance and cut the interfacing. Steam fuse the interfacing to the marked pocket area. Repeat on the other side. Now we're going to mark the notch positions on the wrong side of the fabric, following the notches indicated on the pattern. Also, copy the pleat lines on the front bodice. And for the back lining and facing pieces, add an extra notch at the center by folding the fabric in half. Repeat everything on the other sides. Moving on to the pockets, use the front bodice pattern to mark the pocket placement on both the right and wrong sides of the front bodice. Next, on the wrong side of the pocket bag and the right side of the pocket bag lining, mark a guideline 1.5 cm from the opening edge along the 3 sides. Fold the pocket flap piece in half widthwise, with wrong sides together, and press. Then, on one side of the open edge, draw a guideline 1.5 cm from the edge along 3 sides in the same way as marked for the pocket earlier. Place the wrong side of the pocket bag lining onto the wrong side of the front bodice, matching the guideline on the lining to the upper pocket placement line on the bodice. Pin the layers flat as shown, making sure the pins do not cross the guideline. With the front bodice right side up, align the guideline on the folded pocket flap with the lower pocket placement line on the bodice, keeping the open edge of the flap facing upward. Pin in place, then stitch along the pre-marked guideline. This time, place the pocket bag and the front bodice right sides together, aligning the guideline with the upper pocket placement line and pin in place. From the guideline drawn on the pocket earlier, redraw the line by lowering the center about 1 mm toward the seam allowance, connecting the ends of the original line with a slight curve. Stitch along the newly drawn line. Fold the seam allowances of the pocket flap and pocket bag outward and secure it with pins. Make a small snip at the center first. Cut toward each side, leaving about 1 to 2 cm before the stitching ends. Then, clip diagonally with a V shape, cutting as close as possible to the stitching ends. Take out all the pins from the front and back side. Next, turn the pocket bag and pocket flap through the slit to the wrong side of the bodice. Turn to the wrong side of the bodice and arrange the layers so that the pocket bag lining, pocket flap, and pocket bag are laid flat in order from bottom to top. At this stage, the pocket bag lining may extend longer than the pocket bag. This is normal. While keeping the pocket layers in place, turn the bodice back to the right side. From the right side, check the pocket opening and tuck any visible seam allowances neatly to the inside. Following the white line shown, fold the bodice and the pocket bag lining only. Stitch along the red line to join the 4 layers, the 2 triangular lining and the bodice seam allowance, the pocket flap, and the pocket bag. Repeat the same process for the upper pocket edge. Finish by pressing the pocket opening from both the right and wrong sides to neaten the edges. Return to the wrong side of the bodice. Along the white line, flip the pocket bag toward the front and the bodice toward the back, leaving only the pocket lining exposed. Next, fold the pocket lining upward, wrapping it over the seam allowance of the pocket flap. With the lining folded in place, stitch the pocket bag lining to the flap seam allowance using a 1 cm seam allowance. Return the pocket bag lining and pocket bag to their original positions. At this point, the 2 pocket bag pieces should now be the same length. Next, turn the bodice so the wrong side of the pocket bag lining is facing up. We're going to stitch around the pocket bag lining, pocket flap, and the pocket bag using a 1 cm seam allowance. As you approach the pocket flap area, move the bodice fabric toward the lining side to keep it out of the way while stitching. Moving on to the pleats, turn the front bodice to the wrong side. Fold the lower pleat line upward to overlap with the upper placement line. Secure both ends with pins. Then, press once to set the pleat. On the front side of the bodice, starting at the bottom of the pleat, measure up the distance A and mark the point using a pin or a marking tool. Then, from the bottom edge up to the marked point, top stitch along the pleat at an interval of about 3 to 5 millimeters to secure the pleat. And at the neckline end, also stitch the pleat in place using a 0.5 cm seam allowance. Now we're going to assemble the main fabric pieces together. With the right sides together, align the back bodice pieces and stitch along the center back seam with a 1 cm seam allowance. Press the seam allowances open. Flip the front bodice and place it on top of the back bodice with right sides together and sew along the shoulder seam with a 1 cm seam allowance. Press the seam allowances open. With the right sides together, sew the front and back bodices along both side seams using a 1 cm seam allowance. Press the seam allowances open. With the right sides together, overlap the front sleeve and back sleeve, then sew both side seams using a 1 cm seam allowance. Press the seam allowances open. With the jacket bodice turned so the wrong side faces outward and the sleeve turned so the right side faces outward, insert the sleeve through the jacket opening and pull it through so it comes out at the armhole. First, match the 4 points, the shoulder point, underarm point, front armhole notch, and back armhole notch, then secure them with pins. At the underarm point, fold the bodice seam allowance as shown in the left diagram and pin in place. Distribute and pin the remaining sections evenly, then sew around the entire armhole using a 1 cm seam allowance. Press the seam allowances toward the sleeve. The underarm seam allowance fold should look like this from the wrong side of the bodice. Clip the seam allowances at areas where bulk builds up, such as the shoulder points. Make perpendicular clips towards the seam line without cutting through the stitching to help release the bulk. This can also be done on the sleeve side at the underarm points, but not on the bodice side. Turn the garment right side out. Press along the sleeve top seam from the shoulder center to the sleeve hem, following the seam line to help define the cocoon shape. Next, we're going to assemble the lining pieces. With right sides together, attach the front lining to the front opening facing. Pin first to match the different curves. Then, sew with a 1 cm seam allowance. Press the seam allowances towards the lining. Next, with right sides together, attach the front hem facing to the bottom edge of the piece we just joined, sewing with a 1 cm seam allowance. Press the seam allowances upward. This time, with right sides together, attach the back lining to the back neck facing and back hem facing. Since the curves run in opposite directions, distribute the pin carefully in advance. Then, with a 1 cm seam allowance, sew slowly to avoid catching or puckering the lining fabric. Press all seam allowances toward the lining. With right sides together, sew the shoulder seams of the lining front and back using a 1 cm seam allowance. Press the seam allowances open. With right sides together, sew the side seams using a 1 cm seam allowance, leaving a 15 cm opening on one side. Press the seam allowances open. Attach the back sleeve hem facing to the back sleeve lining and the front sleeve hem facing to the front sleeve lining. Match the notches on the facings and sleeve hems. Then, sew with right sides together using a 1 cm seam allowance. Press the seam allowances toward the lining. With the right sides together, sew both side seams of the front and back sleeve linings using a 1 cm seam allowance. Press the seam allowances open. Using the same method as for the main fabric, place the sleeve inside the bodice so that the right sides are together. Once again, attach the sleeve to the bodice armhole using the same method as with the main fabric. Then, stitch all the way around with a 1 cm seam allowance. Press the seam allowances toward the sleeve. Moving on to the zipper, open the zipper at the top. Fold the top end forward at a 45-degree angle, then fold it back to create a clean finished edge. Secure the folded end with a short tacking stitch close to the edge. With the jacket outer shell placed right side out, mark points 1 cm away from the top and bottom ends of the neckline opening. Separate the zipper, then place it between the notches. Turn the zipper so that the right sides of the zipper and the bodice are facing each other and pin in place. Using a zipper foot, stitch the zipper to the outer shell opening, 0.5 cm from the edge. On the zipper pull side, start sewing the zipper pull position toward the bottom. Sew partly, then stop with the needle down in the fabric. Lift the presser foot only, raise the zipper pull past the presser foot, lower the presser foot and continue sewing. Now it's time to join the completed lining and the outer shell. Arrange the outer shell with the right side facing out, and turn the lining so the wrong side faces out. Insert the outer shell into the lining so the pieces are nested together. At the zipper opening, pin the facing to the main fabric with the right sides together. Then, sew with a 0.7 cm seam allowance, leaving 1 cm unsewn at both the top and bottom. Sewing from the outer shell side is recommended as the existing zipper basting stitches are visible and can be used as a guide. Stitch approximately 2 mm away from the basting stitch for easier and more accurate sewing. And even though the zipper is positioned on the inside this time, the process is the same. Simply lift the presser foot and move past the zipper as needed. Pin together the shell and the facing layer around the neckline. Make sure to match the side neck point. And starting from where the zipper stitching ended, sew all the way around the neckline using a 1 cm seam allowance. Now we're going to understitch the neckline to keep the seam allowance inside. Spread the outer shell and lining apart at the neckline and separate the sleeves. Turn the seam allowances toward the lining and understitch close to the seam line about 2 to 3 mm, sewing as far as possible toward the front neck center. To prevent the neckline seam from puckering when turned right side out, trim the seam allowances all the way around the neckline. Trim as close as possible, about 2 to 3 mm from the stitching, without cutting into the understitching or the original neckline seam. Rejoin the lining and the outer shell as before the understitching. Pin to match the side seams and the center back first, then pin the remaining parts. Starting from where the zipper stitching ended at the jacket opening hem, sew around the entire hem using a 1 cm seam allowance. After sewing, trim the seam allowances at the hem corners of the front opening diagonally, close to the seam line to reduce bulk. Pull the entire garment through the opening left in the lining side seam to turn it right side out. Press the neckline, front opening, and hemline to set the edges. When pressing the neckline and hemline, take care that the seam lines do not show on the outside. When pressing the front opening, pay attention to both sides and press so the outer fabric and facing fold evenly along the zipper seam. Avoid pressing only one side, as this can cause the opposite side to roll past the seam line. Next, top stitch along the zipper opening 3 to 5 mm depending on the fabric thickness and the desired finish. Move to the sleeve opening and neatly align the lining and the outer fabric. Match the upper seam lines of both layers, then pin through all layers to secure and mark the alignment point. Pull only the sleeve back out through the lining opening, ensuring that the pin does not come out. When the sleeve is pulled out, it will separate as shown in the video. Remove the pin, making sure to remember which seam allowance it indicated. Marking this area is recommended. Fold the lining sleeve hem to the right side. Insert it into the shell sleeve while keeping it folded. Align the seam allowance you noted earlier with the corresponding seam allowance on the shell sleeve. And match the remaining seam allowances on the opposite side as well. First, match and pin the top and bottom seam allowances. Then, evenly distribute and pin the remaining sections. When pinning, make sure you are securing only the sleeve facing and the shell sleeve hem. Take care not to catch any other layers. Next, sew all the way around using a 1 cm seam allowance. As the sleeve facing and shell are connected as a continuous tube, rotate and feed the fabric through the opening while sewing, rather than laying it flat. Sew slowly and make sure the layers are not twisted. After sewing the sleeve hem, trim the seam allowances at the top and bottom seam intersections to reduce bulk. Push the sleeve back through the opening and arrange it neatly. Pull out the opposite sleeve through the opening and sew it in the same way as well. After sewing, press the sleeve hems from the right side to set the shape. Now it's time to close the opening with hand stitching. Thread a needle with the color that matches your fabric and tie a knot at the end. Start from the inside of the fabric to hide the knot. Using a ladder stitch, sew along the opening to close it neatly. At the end, finish with a knot to secure the stitches. And that's it, your orbit jacket is complete. Designed for easy layering and seasonless wear depending on your fabric choice. For the pattern link and detailed illustrated instructions, check out the description box below. If you share your make, tag me on Instagram so I can see and feature your work. Thanks for watching.